The notice was a simple, handwritten card tacked to a bulletin board near the grounds of Willow Street College. It advertised a room for rent in a quiet neighborhood at an affordable price, with a number listed for a man named Adisa. No one who glanced at it that morning could have imagined the profound story it was about to begin. Rashida Morgan certainly had no idea. She paused before the board, her fingers lightly tracing the letters. Her peers would have scoffed at such a humble posting, joking that only the most desperate students would live in such places. Yet Rashida's gaze held an unusual focus, a feeling in her gut telling her this was more than just a search for lodging. The man who posted the notice, Adisa Carter, had done so with a heavy heart. A 38-year-old widower, he worked long hours as an office clerk. His modest income stretched precariously between bills and the needs of his vibrant 8-year-old daughter, Amara. The small house he owned, with its creaking floors and peeling paint, was a repository for both his daughter's laughter and the lingering silence left by his late wife. Renting out the upstairs room was not a choice born of desire, but of necessity. Rashida dialed the number. A deep, weary, and cautious voice answered. She explained she was calling about the notice and asked if the room was still free. A pause stretched long enough for her to second-guess the call before a quiet yes came through. He said she could stop by that day if she liked. The Carter house was nestled at the end of a quiet lane framed by overgrown hedges. Rashida paused on the sidewalk, suitcase in hand. For a young woman accustomed to chauffeurs, security, and sprawling estates, this was entirely new territory. But no one here knew she was the daughter of Roland Morgan, one of the city's most powerful billionaires, and that was precisely the point. Adisa answered the door himself. His hair was slightly disheveled, his sleeves were rolled up, and his eyes held a guarded kindness. He took her in with a quick glance, not with judgment, but with the protective assessment of a father. He asked if she was Rashida, and she confirmed with a nod. Before he could say more, a small girl with curious eyes and messy pigtails peeked out from behind his legs, clutching a stuffed rabbit. "Is that her, Daddy?" the child whispered, loud enough to draw a soft chuckle from Rashida. Adisa cleared his throat. "This is my daughter. She's around quite a bit." He added, "If that's going to be an issue?" "It's not," Rashida said quickly, kneeling to Amara's level. "Hi there, I'm Rashida." The little girl observed her for a moment before a wide grin spread across her face. "You can stay." "You look nice." It was such a pure declaration that even Adisa couldn't suppress a smile, the first genuine one he'd had in days. The room upstairs was simple, with bare walls, a small window, and a bed with a worn quilt. To many, it would seem sparse. To Rashida, it felt like a sanctuary. As she set down her suitcase, her heart pounded with a blend of anxiety and relief. "Rent is due at the end of the month," Adisa stated from the doorway, his careful tone returning. "I'll be fair, and if you need anything, just let me know." Rashida met his gaze with a calm, steady look. "Thank you. I think this will be perfect." She didn't mention she could have afforded the city's most luxurious penthouse with a single phone call. She didn't explain that her father would be livid if he knew where she was. For the first time, Rashida Morgan wasn't seeking opulence. She was searching for something real. And neither she nor Adisa could possibly comprehend how this straightforward arrangement was about to transform all of their lives. The first night Rashida spent in the Carter home was filled with an unfamiliar quiet. She was used to echoing marble halls and the constant subtle hum of household staff. Here, the silence was punctuated only by the soft creak of the house settling and the sound of Amara's laughter drifting up from downstairs. It was not luxury, but it was genuine. The following morning, Rashida was awakened by the scent of pancakes. She followed the aroma to the small kitchen, where Amara sat at the table, her legs swinging, as Adisa worked at the stove with a well-loved pan. Amara saw her first. "Good morning, Rashida," she announced, waving her fork like a scepter. Adisa glanced over. "You don't have to come down here. Your space has its own kitchenette." Rashida smiled. "I know, but I thought I might be able to help." Adisa raised an eyebrow. "Help? You're a tenant, not a housekeeper." Before Rashida could respond, Amara jumped from her chair. "Can she help me with my homework?" "Please, Daddy." Rashida knelt beside her. "What kind of homework?" Amara groaned with dramatic flair, wrinkling her nose. "Math. It's horrible." Rashida let out a soft laugh. "I used to feel the same way." In that simple exchange, the first thread of a new connection was woven. In the ensuing days, Rashida fell into a comfortable routine. She attended her college classes, returned in the afternoons, and often spent her evenings downstairs, assisting Amara with school assignments, listening to her imaginative stories, or reading to her before bed when Adisa worked late. Soon, Amara began referring to her as her big sister. One evening, as Rashida braided Amara's hair, Adisa stood watching from the doorway, his arms crossed. A softness eased the tired lines on his face. For years, Amara had known only his care and his efforts. He knew she had longed for a maternal warmth he couldn't provide. He cleared his throat. "She's really grown fond of you." Rashida looked up, a faint smile on her lips. "She's easy to be fond of." Adisa observed her a moment longer. There was an elegance in Rashida's speech and posture that seemed out of place for a student struggling to afford rent, but he dismissed the thought. Everyone had their secrets. Clues to Rashida's other life appeared in small, fleeting moments. Her sleek, high-end phone once lit up with a flood of notifications from a group chat named Morgan Family Gala, which she quickly silenced. When Amara asked if she had ever dined at a fancy restaurant, Rashida's knowing smile was her only answer before she changed the subject, asking Amara about her favorite food. When the little girl whispered, "Chocolate chip cookies," Rashida promised she would bake some soon. Another time, when Adisa's old car broke down, she offered to cover the repairs, disguising it by saying, "I know a really cheap mechanic." Adisa politely refused, his pride a stronger force than his fatigue. Yet she found other ways to contribute. She would bring in groceries, explaining they were part of a buy one, get one free sale. She tucked a new set of pencils into Amara's backpack, claiming they were extras from a college event. Amara accepted these gifts with delight, but Adisa noticed. Late one night, long after Amara was asleep, Adisa went outside to lock the front gate and found Rashida on the porch steps, gazing at the stars. "Do you really like it here?" he asked softly. Rashida turned, the porch light reflecting in her eyes. "More than I ever expected to." He continued, "Most students don't want to live in an old house with a single dad and his kid." Rashida's smile was gentle, tinged with sadness. "Most students aren't looking for what I am." Adisa's curiosity was piqued. "And what is that?" Rashida paused before whispering, "A place that feels like home." Adisa didn't press her for more. He just nodded, but her words stayed with him. Neither of them realized it yet, but the delicate threads of trust and belonging were already weaving a bond that neither wealth nor hardship could ever create. Adisa Carter was a man who knew how to make every dollar count. Rashida saw it in the way he poured the last of the milk for Amara's cereal, filling his own coffee cup with just water. She saw it when he meticulously stitched the sole of a worn-out shoe instead of buying a new pair. She saw it when he walked Amara to school in a downpour, holding his thin coat over her head while he got soaked. These quiet acts of sacrifice spoke volumes to Rashida. Adisa was a man who shouldered his burdens silently, never asking for help. One Saturday, Amara tugged on Rashida's sleeve. "Daddy said we can't go to the fun fair this year because the tickets cost too much," she said, her voice trembling slightly despite her brave face. "But it's okay." Rashida's heart ached. That night she went online and found tickets, determined to see Amara smile. A week later, Amara's squeals of joy echoed through the fairgrounds. When Adisa looked quizzically at the tickets, Rashida quickly explained, "They were free passes from my college, some kind of promotion." Adisa's gaze narrowed for a second, but he let it go. Amara's happiness was too precious to question. Rashida's quiet acts of kindness continued. She would leave bags of groceries on the counter, always with the same story about a great sale. She slipped new notebooks into Amara's school bag, saying her professors had given her extras. When Adisa's car wouldn't start one morning, she arranged for a mobile mechanic, leaving cash in an envelope with a note that read, "College refund check." Adisa was no fool. He saw what was happening, but he didn't know how to address it. Pride and gratitude warred within him, but he allowed the gentle charade to continue, in part because Rashida's help was always offered with such grace. One evening, after Amara had dozed off on the sofa, Adisa carefully draped a blanket over her and stepped out onto the porch. He found Rashida there, sipping tea. "You do a lot for us," he said, his voice low. Startled, Rashida turned. Well, Amara feels like a little sister to me." He studied her. "You buy more than you should. Groceries, school things, those fair tickets." Rashida's heart tightened. "Do you want me to stop?" Adisa shook his head. "No, I just wonder why." Rashida hesitated, unable to reveal that she was the daughter of one of the city's wealthiest men. Instead, she whispered, "Because sometimes giving feels better than having." The next day, Adisa's pride was challenged once more. Amara's sneakers had worn through, with small holes appearing in the soles. He was planning to patch them up after work, but Rashida came home from her classes with a new pair of bright pink shoes, claiming a friend had bought the wrong size. Amara shrieked with delight and threw her arms around Rashida. "You're the best!" Adisa wanted to object, but the pure joy on his daughter's face silenced him. That night, he sat at his desk, staring at a stack of bills. Life had been a constant struggle since his wife passed, and now this young woman, his tenant, was easing the sharp edges of their hardship without ever asking for a thing. Later that week, Amara pulled Rashida over to where Adisa was sitting. "Daddy, can Rashida stay with us forever?" she asked, with the simple logic of a child. Adisa chuckled and ruffled her hair. "That's not really how things work, sweetie." But a lump formed in Rashida's throat because she realized that was exactly what she wanted. While Adisa still saw her as just a kind student, the truth of her life was far more complex, and it was only a matter of time before her hidden world came to his doorstep. It started on a peaceful Sunday afternoon. Amara was at the kitchen table drawing, while Rashida helped Adisa with a leaky pipe under the sink. The house was filled with a comfortable domestic warmth. Then, a sleek black car glided to a halt in front of their home. Its polished surface gleamed, and its tinted windows seemed to seal it off from their modest street. The car was a foreign object in their neighborhood. Adisa frowned, drying his hands on a rag. "Who in the world is that?" Before Rashida could form a reply, the driver's side door opened. A tall, imposing man in a perfectly tailored suit emerged. His silver-streaked hair shone, and his expensive shoes were immaculate. Neighbors began to peek from behind their curtains. Rashida froze. She knew that car. She knew that man. It was her father, Roland Morgan. "Rashida," his voice was sharp, cutting through the quiet afternoon air. "I have been looking all over for you." Amara blinked, confused. Adisa instinctively moved to stand in front of her, his body language becoming tense and protective. "Who are you?" The man's piercing gaze fell on Adisa, softened for a fraction of a second on Amara, and then returned to his daughter. "I'm her father." And she has no business living in a place like this. A ripple of gasps came from the watching neighbors. Adisa turned to Rashida, his expression a mixture of confusion and shock. Father? Rashida's throat felt tight. She gave a slow, guilty nod. This is my dad. The reality of the situation hit Adisa like a physical blow. The kind, unassuming student he had rented a room to was not just any young woman. She was the heiress to one of the city's greatest fortunes. Roland stepped forward, his voice layered with authority. Pack your bags, Rashida. You're coming home. This charade is over. Rashida shook her head. No, not yet. Her father's tone was incredulous. You've been living in... He gestured at the humble house with clear disdain. This place. With strangers. When you have a mansion, security, and every comfort waiting for you. Rashida's voice trembled, but her resolve was firm. That's just money and walls. I found something more here. Amara clutched Rashida's hand. Don't go, she whispered. Roland's eyes flickered with disapproval as he looked at the little girl, then back at Adisa. This man cannot give you what you need. He can't protect you or provide the life you deserve. Adisa's pride flared. I never said I could, he stated firmly, but she has been safe and respected here. Rashida stepped between them. Dad, please. You don't get it. This family, Adisa and Amara, they've given me something our mansion never did. They gave me warmth, a sense of belonging. Silence descended, thick and heavy. Roland's jaw was set. You are my daughter, Rashida. Your place is with me. Rashida met his gaze with a quiet strength. I may be your daughter, but here, I finally felt like a sister, like part of a family that saw me, not my name or my inheritance. Her father's stern expression faltered for an instant. He had never heard her speak with such unwavering conviction. Inside the house, Amara clung to her. You're not leaving, are you? Rashida knelt down, smoothing her hair. I don't want to. Adisa stood silently, a storm of emotions churning within him. He desperately wanted her to stay, but he knew she came from a world impossibly different from his. Still, the sight of tears in Amara's eyes made his heart ache. Finally, Roland let out a heavy sigh. We will discuss this at home. His eyes swept over the room, landing reluctantly on Adisa. I see this place means something to you. Rashida stood up, her hand still in Amara's. It means everything. For the first time, Roland Morgan considered that his daughter's heart might hold a richness that all his money could never buy. The Carter house had never felt so heavy. The gentle warmth Rashida cherished had been replaced by a tense silence that seemed to press in from the walls. Adisa sat on the edge of the sofa, his gaze fixed on the stack of bills on his desk, while Rashida stood at the window, twisting the curtain in her hands. Amara, sensing the strain, was curled up with her stuffed rabbit, her usual bright energy dimmed by worry. Adisa was the first to speak, his voice low but firm. Rashida, your father is right. This isn't where you belong. She spun around, her eyes flashing with hurt. Don't say that. I chose to be here, with you and Amara. He sighed, rubbing his temples. You're different. Anyone can see that. The way you talk, the way you carry yourself, all those little acts of kindness you tried to hide. I should have known you weren't just some ordinary student. Rashida moved closer. So, what if I'm different? Does that change how I feel about this place? Adisa looked up, his eyes full of weariness. You deserve more than a house with creaky floors and a man who patches his own shoes. You deserve a life of safety and comfort, things I can't give you. Her voice trembled, but she stood her ground. Do you think comfort is more important than love? Than laughing together around a dinner table? Do you really believe a mansion full of staff feels more like a home than this? Adisa faltered. Her words resonated deep inside him, but his pride was a powerful shield. Your father can give you everything, Rashida. I can barely give Amara enough. Amara, who had been listening quietly, suddenly cried out, But you do give me everything, Daddy. Her small voice broke as tears streamed down her face. She ran to Rashida and grabbed her hand. And Rashida makes us happy. Please don't make her leave. Rashida knelt and hugged the little girl, her own eyes filling with tears. I'm not going anywhere, sweetie, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. The sight broke through Adisa's defenses. He wanted to believe her, wanted her to stay more than anything, but the reality of their situation felt insurmountable. That evening, Roland Morgan returned, assuming Rashida would be packed and ready to leave. Instead, he found her at the dinner table with Adisa and Amara, sharing a simple meal of soup and bread. Amara was giggling, Rashida was smiling softly, and Adisa was watching them with an expression Roland couldn't quite name. His voice boomed from the doorway. Rashida, this foolishness ends now. Come home. She rose from her chair. Home? Dad, this place feels more like home than our mansion ever has. Roland scowled. You're being sentimental. This man, he gestured toward Adisa, cannot offer you a stable future. Adisa stood, his jaw tight. He's right, Rashida. I can't. The words were a knife in her heart. He turned to her, his voice strained with forced resolve. You need to go with him. You'll have a real future there. Rashida shook her head vehemently. My future is for me to decide, and I choose to stay here. The room went quiet. Amara's small hand gripped Rashida's, her tear-stained face pleading with the adults. Why can't she just stay with us forever? For the first time, Roland was speechless. His daughter's defiance, the child's pure love, and Adisa's quiet dignity struck him all at once. He was looking not at a struggling clerk, but at a man who possessed a strength and love that no fortune could ever purchase. Rashida's voice softened. Dad, don't you see? Here, I'm not a billionaire's daughter. I'm just me. And that's all I've ever wanted to be. Roland let out a long, slow breath as his certainty began to crumble. Adisa, caught between his pride and his heart, looked at Rashida, knowing that whatever happened next, their lives were irrevocably changed. The tension from Roland Morgan's visit lingered in the air like a gathering storm. Rashida tossed and turned all night, her thoughts torn between her father and the home she'd found with the Carters. Adisa paced the living room, burdened by feelings he couldn't articulate. Amara, sensing the emotional turmoil, held her stuffed rabbit tightly, as if afraid everything good might disappear. The next morning, Roland returned. This time he lacked the sharp authority of a CEO. His suit jacket was slung over his arm, and his face was etched with fatigue. He looked less like a magnate and more like a father who hadn't slept. Rashida, he began, his tone much softer than before. I don't understand your choice, but I can see that you found something here, something my money could never provide for you. Rashida's eyes widened in surprise. Does that mean you'll let me stay? Roland paused, then gave a slow nod. If this is truly what you want, yes. I won't drag you away, but I have to be sure you are taken care of. His gaze moved to Adisa. And you, Mr. Carter, you've managed to do something I never could. You gave my daughter a sense of belonging. Adisa stiffened. I didn't do anything special. Roland shook his head. What's special isn't always expensive. Sometimes it's just being human. A fragile peace settled over the room. Roland made no move to force Rashida out. Instead, he asked quietly, What do you need? Adisa started to protest, but Rashida spoke first. We don't need anything. We have what matters. But Roland wasn't blind. He saw the worn shoes by the door, the frayed curtains, and the stack of bills on the desk. His wealth had bought him immense power, but he realized in that moment that this family possessed something priceless: love. He cleared his throat. At the very least, allow me to fund Amara's education. Consider it my way of thanking you for looking after my daughter. Adisa hesitated, his pride warring with practicality. But when he saw Amara's eyes light up, he finally relented with a nod. All right. But that's all. Rashida smiled through her tears. Thank you, Dad. Life slowly found its new rhythm. Rashida continued her studies while living in the upstairs room of the Carter house. Amara flourished at school with new supplies and shoes, though she insisted her favorite part of any day was when Rashida read her bedtime stories. Adisa remained guarded, but every evening he came home from work to the sound of Rashida and Amara laughing. The walls he'd built around his heart began to soften. She was no longer just a tenant. She was part of their family. One evening, as the three of them sat for dinner, Rashida met Adisa's eyes across the table. The unspoken gratitude in his gaze and the deep affection in hers filled the silence between them. Amara broke the spell with her cheerful voice. This feels like forever, doesn't it? Adisa chuckled. What do you mean, sweetie? Amara grinned. Like Rashida will always be here. Like we're a real family now. A lump formed in Rashida's throat, but she smiled. Maybe forever is just made of moments like this. Later that night, Roland stood on the sidewalk outside the small house, watching through the window as laughter filled the dining room. For the first time in a very long time, he didn't see his daughter as a lonely girl in a cavernous mansion. He saw her happy. Truly happy, he whispered to himself. Perhaps she was right all along. Inside, Adisa, Rashida, and Amara clinked their water glasses in a simple toast. There was no grand feast or glittering chandeliers, only warmth, laughter, and a profound sense of belonging. As Rashida looked around the modest room, she finally understood the truth she had been searching for. The greatest treasures in life are not found in fortunes, but in the hearts of those who open their doors to you.